Welcome to the Real Life Moms podcast, where we put ourselves at the top of our to-do list. I'm Lisa Foster, your host, and today I'm here with fellow mom and licensed hypnotherapist Amy Hammond. And together we are going to explore past lives. So this is going to be exciting and something new. So hi, Amy. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm so glad that you said yes to coming on because I have been very curious about past lives. I haven't actually done it myself, but I've had people talk about it. And I just love learning anything new that is a new modality that we can kind of use to just improve ourselves, really. So I'd love for you to start to tell us just what exactly is past life work and kind of what it entails.
Past life work is very similar to most hypnotherapy, where I provide a client in a safe, relaxed place, and I have them come in my room. I personally have a massage table that I use. They lay down, they get comfortable. I do have a chair if people are more comfortable sitting up, and I go through a series of breathing techniques and reading of my scripts to get them relaxed and get them in a suggestible state. And so that they're in a position to connect with their subconscious and to rewire their brain and learn more about themselves in a faster, more efficient way than they would if we were doing therapy. Because especially with past life, it's really great because you're getting a third party perspective. Like, the best way I would explain it is sometimes you may feel like you can give your friend better advice than yourself because you're watching it from the outside. And I find that way that's similar with past life because it's you, but you're a little bit more removed from it. So I end up having the clients get really relaxed, and we start out with a root issue or something that they want to learn more about themselves, like something maybe they can't pin on why they do something or they feel a certain way. It could be something as simple as like they have this phobia or they have this sense that maybe their child or a friend or a partner that they've known them before and they just want to dig into that a little bit more. Some cases, I have clients come because they have unknown pain, right? They've been to the doctors, they have no origin of this pain, they don't know where it came from. I also have clients come in because they find themselves not able to move forward in whether it be their career, their love life, and they feel like they're attracting the same partner and they can't figure out why. So we get to the root of that. And then I have other people that come to me and just feel like something is missing, like they're not where they're supposed to be, or they feel particularly drawn to a particular time period that they want to learn more about. And so we kind of dig into that as well.
So cool. So, are you actually like, are these people actually going to a real, like, past life of their own?
Yeah, and everyone views it differently because there's more than one level of trance. There's like four different levels of trance, and some people get into it deeper. I can hypnotize the same person and they can be in a different level of trance each time. And that could be dependent on maybe they got stuck in traffic on the way there, or they're nervous because this particular issue that they're being put under for, they're more nervous to hear about it. And past lives, I think, can be kind of intimidating to people in general just because you don't know where you're going to go. And when it comes to a past life, we're in a lot of cases seeing an entire life. Now, sometimes if someone's coming in for a specific reoccurring theme, right? I've had clients come in for relationship related stuff where they've seen snippets of multiple lives and they saw this reoccurring relationship pattern. But traditionally, I have someone come in and we go into a past life and we move periodically through that life till we get to the death scene. And that can be intimidating to people to witness their own death. But it's like, I don't know if you've ever heard about bioscopic fantasies, and that's like the idea of your whole life flashing before your eyes. And it's something that we now know happens. It's happened to enough people. There's science behind it, and it's this whole review of your life. Well, it's the same idea when you're doing past life regression because you're getting this review of multiple lives, multiple themes, and you're doing it without psychedelics.
Mm.
which some of those will make you sick. And we can fast forward if we're in something, we can pause, and it gives you a lot of ways to sit there and learn about yourself, but be less critical because it's you, but it's not you.
Yeah. Okay, I do have to ask because you mentioned something. I was like,
Yeah.
so deja vu, right? Like
Yes.
you think something happened or you're like, have I been here before? Is that like you tapping into a past life or is that something totally different?
Well, so this is the idea. Like you can also have parallel lives. So you can do past life regression and you can regress somebody into a parallel life. And because it's the idea of that we're souls having a human experience and there's multiple stream of consciousness, right? So that's kind of where that ties into. Now, I have an experience where I've regressed someone into a parallel life before. I've had other practitioners that I know that have done that, and it can be kind of really confusing from the person that's going under because things are similar but not. But
Interesting.
when you're doing the past lives, everyone sees it differently. So, depending on what level of trance that my client is in, if they're really deep, they can touch, they can smell, they're more in tuned into their environment. Other times it's like flashes of images and they have the feelings and the sensations which we tune into, and then it almost brings it into focus. And then sometimes it's almost like a movie screen, but it has a lot to do with what you're ready to see.
Mm.
Because you can come in to me with a specific intent and say your intent is career focused, and you might go back to in a past life and we may tap into something that's more relationship focused
Mm.
because that's really what you need to work on first.
Okay. Now, I did hear you say some people are nervous, so they can't go fully under, or they're different levels of going under. So, are there like myths about past life regression that you hear and you're like, okay, that is not true? And if so, what are those big myth busters that you have for us?
Well, the myth is that not everyone can be regressed.
Mm.
So you can be in different levels of trance. So everyone can have a different experience. Like as I said, I can be put on, I've myself have been put under by the same practitioner multiple times, and I've even went back to the same life. I've seen different pieces of that life. And the first time I went, it wasn't as deep. I was there, but I couldn't touch, smell, and taste it. But I have been in and have done deep enough regressions where people come out of it and it's similar feeling to being in a dream, but it is so unbelievably real. And there's just information that you have that you wouldn't otherwise have. So I've had clients that have come in, and another component that makes it challenging for some people is their religious beliefs will make it challenging for them to do this. And so which I'm not making any judgments on what's real, what's not real. I always ask my client when they come in if they believe in a higher power, what it is. And I feel that no matter what your religious background is, you can get something out of it. I've had clients that had a very, very religious background and they were like, I'm going to treat this like a metaphor. And that was one of my clients that had one of the deeper sessions where they got dates and names and they were able to look them
Mm.
up. So
Wow.
they were able to find, like, they saw a family crest and they were able to later look it up and locate that that family crest existed in that time period.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. Okay.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's important for people to actually work on past life? Like, how does it help us in our lives, like today, in present life?
I think any type of hypnosis, I feel, is very similar to therapy. And I might be projecting, but I think in 10 or so years, it's going to be viewed the same. I feel like the insurance coverage is going to be the same. And I feel like it's going to be more socially acceptable. People are going to be more familiar with it. People aren't going to question it as much because there's going to be just so much more behind it. But it's beneficial because it works faster than talk therapy. Because when you're doing talk therapy, you can be experiencing a situation logically without being tuned into those emotions. And you're talking about everything and you're not in a place to rewire your brain to make new patterns. Because I can regress somebody and they can notice a relationship pattern, right? Maybe they're noticing in all these past lives that they weren't really connected to their partner. They never got married, they never got close. That in itself may be something that my client didn't notice in their waking life. And when they're viewing it from a third party perspective, they're viewing it with a lot less judgment and they're accessing their subconscious. But that could encourage a client of mine to start learning about attachment styles. So start reading about attachment styles because when they're watching it like that, they might be like, wow, that was 5 or 6 lives that I did the same thing and I wasn't really close to my partner. And that could lead them to do more self-discovery, which is what I encourage. I encourage journaling after. And no matter what, a client coming to me is going to learn more about themselves. They're going to learn if they have a hard time relaxing, right? They're going to learn if they have a hard time releasing control or trusting in what I'm doing. So no matter what happens, they're going to, almost whether they want to or not, they're going to learn more about themselves.
Yeah, well, hopefully, if they choose to come, that
Yeah.
they're ready for that, right? So
Yeah.
that's good. But it sounds like these repetitive patterns, I think one of the things, I mean, because that's probably showing up in their present life, right? And then
Mhm.
going back into their past lives, they can actually see how these repetitive patterns kind of followed them through each life,
Mhm.
right? Until present time. So I think that's really interesting. And like you said, it's almost like I'm assuming you're kind of breaking the pattern or rewiring the brain so
That's the
that
hope.
that's the hope. Might
Yeah.
take some time, right? Work in progress. But that's one of the things that could help that present life to change so that you're not always doing the same thing, which I think a lot of us do get stuck in.
Yeah, because so for example, you may have someone that has a fear of commitment, right? Now, if we were going to look that in like a very small piece, you'd be like, oh, well, that's probably something to do with their childhood. Maybe they had a really bad relationship. They could regress with me and they could see that they had this really passionate relationship and that something catastrophic happened to their partner. So that fear of commitment may not be from this life, right? Because they could have grown up in, there is no perfect home, but textbook wise, everything on paper looked good, that they haven't had any really catastrophic relationships that broke their trust or possibly changed their attachment style or gave them an insecure attachment style. And that could be why they're experiencing that, which is the other thing that's interesting to tap into with past lives is the idea of generational curses. Are you familiar with those?
I can gather what that means, but like tell me about, yeah, I mean, fascinated.
So, like, the idea with generational curses is that, like, it's a reoccurring pattern in your genealogy that's going to reoccur, right? And so, one of the like one levels we've looked at it is like my mother is an alcoholic, I'm going to be an alcoholic, or and we traditionally had believed this type of behavior to reoccurring from like genetics, and one of the more important reasons is witnessing. If a child sees a parent being an alcoholic or being in an abusive situation, exponentially they have a higher chance of that happening, right? When you start in therapy, this is the stuff that comes up in family history. But it was actually really interesting. There was, I can't remember the name of it, but there was a neuroscience magazine and it was published in 2013 and they did a study on mice. And what was interesting about this study was they would spray the smell of cherry blossoms and they would zap the mice.
Hmm.
And so over time, the mice started reacting to the smell of cherry blossom, right? Because they had made the connection they were going to get zapped. What was particularly interesting, and they have no idea what DNA markers cause this, but 2 generations later, when they sprayed the cherry blossom smell, the mice reacted as if they were getting zapped and they were not being zapped. So that pattern was carried on in their genealogy. We have no scientific explanation of why or how that occurred. And so this is particularly interesting because we've always believed that a lot of this behavior was genetic and it was something we witnessed and we had happened. But we've seen in cases where people were adopted and they were exhibiting similar behavior, or twins that were split at birth being very, very similar. So there's other components there, but you can really tap into those generational curses and generational trauma. And that's the idea of healing your entire family line. So you're not passing it on to your children. So it's just, and to my knowledge, I don't know that there's any other way to do that other than past life regression.
And I mean, I could see that you're healing the generations to come, like your own children. Are you also healing your past generations as well?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like releasing it, the idea of like trapped trauma, because we often talk about that, right? And that's in much of what you do. Is like energy gets trapped in the body
Mhm.
and you got to move it through the body and release it. And you have to kind of tap into it. Then there's not great feelings that go along with that. And I'm sure like in your work, you've experienced that where when you're moving energy, get emotional. So it's very, very similar. It's just the idea that you're watching it on the movie, like almost like a movie screen. You're in the movie or you're watching it like a movie and you're understanding why certain things happen. And in a lot of cases, there was a lot of stuff that happened that in most people's family line that they didn't know about. And I mean, I was regressed one time and I had a really intense regression and my logical brain, when I was conscious, tried telling me that like it didn't occur. I was like, oh, I just made this up. And I was at a doctor's appointment and I was discussing it with my mother about my regression and like the traumatic stuff that happened in my regression, or that I had this traumatic regression. I didn't say specifically what it was. And my mom had disclosed to me that when she went through a divorce, she went on a spiritual retreat. Now, I had no idea that she went on this spiritual retreat 15 years ago. It was never brought up. My parents are very, very religious. It wouldn't even have dawned on me as something that she would do. And when she was there, she was afraid to do a regression because she had a reader, medium, psychic, however you want to put it, tell her at one point a very specific scene that they said either happened to her or someone in her genealogy. And my mom explained it to the T, and it was exactly what I had regressed a week
Mm.
prior. And so she had gotten this reading 15 years ago. And so, and that was the confirmation that I needed that like what I experienced was authentic because A, I didn't know my mom went on a spiritual retreat. I had no idea anyone had ever said that to her, and it was exactly what I had experienced. And so perhaps if she would have been regressed, that would have been something that she released in her family line that maybe I wouldn't have seen to
Mhm.
release.
Yeah, wouldn't have been passed down to you. That's so interesting. Now, obviously, you've done some of your own work through actually studying this and working with clients. How has it changed your life as far
Ah,
as, yeah, go ahead. I mean,
in
apparently we hit a
every,
big note there.
yeah, in
You're like,
every way. So for me, the biggest thing that this has really helped me with is accepting death.
mm,
And what really drew me into this, I was in a time period where we had lots of losses in our family. And when I say that, I'm talking like right out of the gate, we had three really close losses in like 6 months, but like total, it was like seven in like a year and a half. So it was a lot. And I find that in some cases, some losses that you'll experience, you'll always question if they were preventable, whatever they are, right? And there's, oh, maybe if I got someone to the hospital, or maybe if I did this, all these what ifs. And when you regress and you learn the idea of soul contracts and you come to this understanding that things are already
mm,
pre-decided before you get here, you're able to accept and release certain guilt and responsibility you should have never put on yourself in the first place. But it makes death not seem so permanent because you're like, oh, we've already done this before. We're going to do this again. I'm going to see them again. It's that kind of like confirmation, this inner knowing that everyone has, because whether someone believes that you're going to reincarnate or they're going to go to heaven or where they're going to go, we all have this collective feeling that we're going to see each other again. But it just doesn't seem as long as when you do the regressions, and you come to realize that a lot of what happens in your life before you got here is already predetermined. Yeah, there's several different pathways. If you react a certain way, something's going to happen, but there's a lot of fixed events that you have signed up for, whether it be like being a parent, having a significant loss, having a very challenging divorce. These are all things that your soul decided that this was the only way that it was going to learn and grow.
I've heard of soul contracts before. I've actually have like patients that I see who do past life regression.
Mhm.
And it's a big part of their healing process, actually. And they do talk a lot about soul contracts. So tell us a little bit about like what is a soul contract and how it plays a part in all this.
Well, it can honestly really be anything under the sun. Like you can have a soul contract with a partner to be like the most toxic individual you've ever met. You may have a soul contract to lose a child, whether it be in childbirth or any something else. And you can have a soul contract to be poor. Maybe in your past life, you were rich and there were certain lessons that you didn't learn. You were maybe you also will fall in love with somebody of a different like religious background. Maybe you will pick to have parents that are very, very traditional and religious, and your soulmate, perhaps one of them, will be someone that does not follow those religious beliefs because your lesson is to follow your heart and your intuition and to broaden your mind that there's more things than just one school of thought. So there's a ton of different things your soul contract can or cannot be, and you can choose to keep that soul contract. Like, for example, you could have a soul contract of poverty, right? So this would be like a blockage. Someone might come to me, it's like, I have no idea why this keeps happening. Like, no matter what I do, I just can't get on top of money. My relationship with money is negative. And it could be because you chose to be poor in this life, but you could regress. You could see those past lives. You could come to the conclusion of what you were hoping to learn and grow about not being materialistic in this life. And you could decide that you have completed that soul contract, that you feel like you got the understanding you needed from it and remove that blockage. But they can be tons of different things. And there's a lot of different schools of thought about it, like how there's different schools of thoughts about soulmates, and now the very popular idea of twin flames, which everyone has different thoughts and ideas about that as well.
So you can technically break your soul contract because some of these contracts do not sound like amazing to have.
You can
You can
void them.
void them, but you do
Mhm,
need to go back and do it almost with somebody like you. It's right
mhm. Yeah.
or
I
no, yeah.
mean, there's the idea that you have like cords and attachments to soulmates and other people that you have decided to incarnate with this life. And you can do your own breathing exercises and meditations of doing your own cord cuttings. But I don't know. I find that doing a regression that you actually figure out what the contract is, because you may just feel like a pull to this toxic person and you don't know, or you don't know why that is. Is it, childhood wounding that you need to acknowledge and move past? Is it just the soul tie is that they're just so familiar that you're connecting to them? Especially, people that aren't very connected to their own family, maybe someone that's adopted, you would be even more alluring to go for someone that feels like you've known them before, right? So, and if they were someone that in this life was playing the part of the villain for you, it would be even harder for you to pull back. But you would learn that in a past life because if you saw that you had multiple past lives with them, especially if you saw you had multiple past lives with them where they're very negative, you could start to figure out more stuff about yourself. But it's usually a ball of wax, if you will, because you're usually experiencing those things because there is wounding, there are lessons you need to learn, but it can be easier to detach from that person if you void the contract because you can have a soul contract to have a child with somebody, but maybe in your logical real 3D life that person is not ready to have a kid. And so does it make sense to fulfill that soul contract with someone that may even a in this life not choose to have a kid but not be ready? So just because you have the pull and you even maybe acknowledge in a session with me that's a soul contract, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right time or you should or have to carry it out in this life.
Yeah, okay. All right. So, two questions that are coming. First of all, I just want to clarify. So, you said, like, are we reincarnating with similar people?
Yes. And that's a thing that's neat too, because you can reincarnate as like different things. I mean, I've had people that have even reincarnated as trees, right? So there's a
Yeah.
lesson to learn from being a tree or an animal or any of those things. But that's one of the questions when I have a client under, they'll tell me who they're seeing and where they are in the time period, to the best of their ability. A lot of times we're able to discern that by area around us and what we're wearing. So if you're seeing candles and dirt floor and stuff like that, then you come up with an idea of the time frame. But you just kind of almost get this sense, like this feeling, this knowing in some cases of what time and where you're at. And when it comes to the other people around you, they may look completely different, but they'll feel like it. So I've
Mm.
had, even in my own experience and with clients, they'll be like, there's this person in the room and they're my brother now, but they're my, I'm like, well, are they familiar to in this life? And they're like, that's my father. So the roles will change. And sometimes by doing regressions, people that have tumultuous relationships with their parents, they'll regress and see like maybe in a past life that they like stole that their mother's husband. And so like there's just some kind of animosity that's come into this life that makes no sense. So it's crazy. There's sometimes where,
Crazy.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. I do have to ask though, like, what is the goal? Like, if you're always kind of like coming back and trying to work on certain things and making these contracts to basically learn in whatever the next life is, do you ever hit a point where you've learned it all and you're at peace?
Well, I guess that's the theory behind that is where do your spiritual guides come from?
Mm-hmm.
So in some circles, it's believed that you become a guide. Now, the Long Island medium, Teresa Caputo, she talks about she knows this is her last incarnation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do we have any science behind that? No, but she's been pretty spot on about a lot of
I
stuff.
do love the Long Island medium. I used to watch
Yeah.
her all the time, just FYI, and I'm from Long Island, so I do love her. Yes.
Yeah. But she firmly says that this is her last incarnation and she will be a guide next
Mm,
time. I mean,
interesting.
I don't have any data on that, but that's what's, thought to be believed. But, and that's the same thing. It's like you could see in these past lives that you're making the same mistakes you're making in this life. Like maybe you're in a job that you just don't love and you don't have passion for, and you saw that you were in a job before where you were maybe 10 or 12 and you were working in a factory because you had to do it for your family. You didn't have a choice. And then you realize when you were in this life, you're like, I don't have a choice. But then you were able to compare this life to that life. You're like, oh my gosh, I have a huge choice.
Mm.
Like, I don't have to be doing this. Like, I'm making the same mistake. I'm not enjoying my life. Because if you don't learn the lesson, you're going to do it again and again.
Yeah, yeah, and that gets tiresome for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned a lot in this lifetime, actually, as you're talking. I'm like, all right, but I
Yeah.
haven't regressed yet, so we might have to
Yeah.
meet again. Well, tell me what is one thing the listeners can start doing today after listening to this podcast? What do you want them to do?
Just sit with yourself. If you are feeling like you're having deja vu, if you feel drawn to a specific time period, if you feel like you maybe have known someone before, like journal it, write it down. Come up with your own natural first instincts on what you think it is. Like, why do you think you know them? What about them feels familiar? All of those things. And if it's something you're really interested in and you're nervous to try it, how I started out, like I did my first regression, but one of the books I really liked was by Brian Weiss, and it was what was it? Yeah, Many Lives, Many Masters.
Oh, I've heard of that. Yeah.
And it was super interesting. And he was a therapist and he kept this work to himself for such a long time because he thought it was going to affect his career negatively. And he got a lot of answers about the universe and how things worked through his clients. So if that's something you're interested in, that's a great book to start out with to get some knowing. But what I will say is some people can be intimidated to try it because they're afraid what they're going to know and what they're going to see. And it could be something just they're worried they may see themselves in a past life that maybe they did horrible things. And then I have the most surface level where people are like, I am petrified to see myself pass. And they're afraid about feeling it. So I do want to kind of touch on that. When you're in a regression with me, you can be watching it like a movie. You can be watching yourself above it. And if someone is in a death scene and they're feeling it and smelling it or uncomfortable, I can always pull you out so you can just be a spectator. And like any other hypnotherapy, if it's too much, we do our anchors and we leave. So when you're doing past life regression, no matter what you're going under for, no matter what we're doing, you're the driver. I'm literally telling you what roads are available and helping them come into focus, but you at any times are able to put the brakes on. We're able to reverse to go back to see something, and we are always able to fast forward through something.
That's awesome. You're kind of like MapQuest or like
Yeah.
Google Maps or something where you can go
Yeah.
A, B, C, this will take
Yeah.
you 22 minutes. This will take you 20 minutes. Fastest
Yeah.
route.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. Well, where can the listeners find you and tell us a little bit about what you offer in your services?
Right now, one of the best ways to find me is on Instagram. My business name is All of Me because that's what we're doing. We're doing work of all. I'm doing this life, your other lives, all of them. Because I also do Akashic records, so that's every life you've ever had and every life you ever will have. But so my handler on Instagram is all underscore of underscore me, and I do weekly videos on there. That's where I advertise when I have discounts. I love doing discounts, like I'm doing one right now for the holidays of $10 off. I like doing Mother's Day ones and Father's Day and Veterans ones because I don't know, I really love doing this. And sometimes you need a little bit of a incentive or push to kind of like, oh, this is the time to do it instead of putting it off. And so I find that to be helpful. But I also have a email and it's Amy, AMY, all of me, 111 at gmail.com. And those are two really great ways to get hold of me. Also, I can do telemed. I do in-office visits in Connecticut, but if you're not local, I can do telemed. And you can always reach me or ask me questions through my cell phone, 860-857-7009.
Awesome. Well, so many ways to get in touch with you. And I really loved all your information today. You really explained it so well and made it not so unknown and scary. It seems like something that I think people who are on the iffy side of like, oh, maybe I would try that, would be more comfortable doing. So thank you so much for sharing all that today.
Yeah, I sometimes I really wonder. I think a lot of people question if they've known someone before because a lot of times we hear when people start having kids, they'll feel like this special connection to their kids. And sometimes it's really not just that your kids, you guys have hung out before, you know?
So true. I like that would freak me out. Like to find out like my kid is actually like my dad in a past life.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times it's role reversal. So they were your parent the last time, or they were like a sibling. And so but that's sometimes the thing that's super endearing about it too, is it kind of, when you have a special relationship, it kind of adds an extra layer to it because you've had these other special experiences with them and it totally gives you insight on why you're so in tuned and aligned with that person.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So cool. And yeah, we're all more than just one thing, right? So many lives, many experiences, like it all makes us up. So that it's so
Yeah.
cool. So thank you so much for coming on. Thanks for sharing everything with us. And yeah, I'll have all your stuff in the show notes so that people can click on the link and maybe check out their own past life.
Yeah, I would love to see all of you guys. It's so much fun, I promise.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you want to learn more about Amy and all that she has to offer, just click on the link in the show notes. And until next week, keep carving out time for yourself and keep putting yourself on top of your to do list.